So I'm going to show you today how to pause the game using this game I've already got set up. So first thing you're going to want to do is go into the project settings, and go ahead and set a pause. You're just going to do action, pause. So on the keyboard I did escape. On the controller I did button 11, which is the pause button. In this instance I'm going to be tying it to the player so the player can pause it and it'll tell it this player is the one who paused the game. So for now I'm going to do if event is action pressed paused pause. So if it's pause, we're going to just go ahead and print pausing game from player ID. This is just a variable I have to keep track of which players are which. So I go ahead and run the game. If I push the pause button on the controller, it calls pause from game player 2. If I press the escape key on the keyboard, pause game from player 1. Now this next part I'm going to handle it in a global script. You don't need to do this. You could handle it in the player if you want to, but I'm going to do this simply so I can keep track of which player paused the game and which player could unpause the game. If you don't know how to do global scripts, I have a tutorial in the iCode. So I'm just going to do function pause game. I'm just going to pass the player ID in the player. Instead of printing that, I'm just going to call global pause game player ID. So inside pause game, we're just going to call get tree dot paused equals true. So I'm going to just go ahead and run this. And that just pauses the game. So I have no way to continue right now, so I'm going to add a pop-up menu that comes up if the game gets paused. And that menu will allow the player who paused the game to navigate it to unpause the game or do what they need to, change the options, exit the game. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a new prefab in my GUIs. I'm just going to new script, and this is going to be the pause menu. It's going to be a user interface. I'm going to have this a canvas layer, and I'm going to have a margin container with a full rectangle. So this will take the full size of the screen. So first thing, I'm going to want the button centered, so I'm going to do an H box, and I'm going to add a margin left, margin right. Margin, I'm going to do size flag, horizontal expand. So it's going to take up as much space as it can. This is left padding. I'm going to duplicate that, Control D, right padding. So anything I add in between the two will be right in the center. So I'm going to just go ahead and add a V box. That's going to be centered, and then I'm also going to center it on that, and we're going to do expand vertical. Same with this one, size flag, expand vertical. So anything we add right in between here and here will be centered on the screen. I'm just going to go ahead and add a button, just toss that in between the two. Right there, it's centered. I'm just going to call this continue. I'm going to duplicate, options. Okay, so we have the 3 buttons. I'm going to go ahead and name the buttons in here just so we know what buttons which. On the V box container, I'm going to add a custom constraint separation. You could just add a margin in between these and set the rectangle min size. That would allow you, like just if you added one in between each. But since we want them all spaced equally, it's just easiest to add separation. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 25 here. And that's going to space them out a little bit. Let's go ahead and look at that in the, yeah, it looks good. So for now, we're just going to add into this a pause menu GD. We're going to go ahead and go to the buttons node and just add a pressed, connecting them to that. So continued press, I'm just going to go ahead and tell global to continue. I'm just going to go into global. Right below pause game, I'm going to add a continue game. Just get tree paused equals false. Options, for now, we're not going to do anything with that. It's going to open up another menu, kind of like this one. And then on exit pressed, I have a character select screen load already. So this just get tree, change scene right here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause menu, replace that with that. Global.character select screen. I don't need any of this for now, so just clean that up. So for now, I'm just going to add the pause menu right into here. I just did that by clicking right here, dragging it into here. When I run the game, there's going to be a pause menu. Pause menu just right here, continue, option, exit does something, everything else doesn't. But we don't want the pause menu showing up when it's not supposed to. Inside the pause menu, I'm just going to do process, and I'm going to do get tree.paused. So if get tree.paused, show. You could also do self.visible equals true. That'll give you the same results. Else self.hide, and let's go ahead and try this. So I actually didn't know this, but telling it to not show the control node actually will do nothing in this case. So if we hide the control node, you still see it. Instead of doing self.hide, I'm going to find the main container and hide that. So I'm just going to find it in this first process. Just tell it find node main container. This shouldn't take too long because it's a direct path down. It only has to search 2 items. And I'm going to go ahead and set main container equals that. I'm then going to do main container dot show main container dot hide. I'm going to go ahead and comment out this. So let's go ahead and try that. So this pause menu isn't pulling up, and that's actually because it is pausing. So instead of inheriting, we're going to still process. Stop tells it to stop when it's paused. Inherit tells it to do what its parent's doing, so all these will follow this guy. Process tells it to keep processing. So everything in here should keep processing. I'm going to go ahead and select my character. Pause menu shows up. Continue, and it hides. So if I were to do exit, that takes me here. And there is a slight bug here, but that's a whole nother thing. If you followed the tutorial up to this point, you should have a working pause menu. You don't really need most of the code I had, but over this next little part, I'm going to show you how to make so the person who pressed the pause menu could unpause it using his controller. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is make so that you could press the pause button to unpause. I'm going to go ahead and make so that only the controller who pressed the pause button could unpause this way. So in global, I'm just going to go ahead and add a variable who paused. It's just going to be integer. This is just going to be equal to the player ID. So I'm going to do pause game. I'm just going to go ahead and add right down there who paused equals player ID. Now inside the pause menu, I'm going to add something very similar to what I added in the player. I'm just going to copy and paste it here. Continue game. In global, I have player stats, but I could go ahead and use all these getter functions to get that stuff. In order to check if it's the same person who pressed the pause menu who is pressing the pause menu again, I'm going to check get uses keyboard and get input. So basically, I'm going to get if they're using a keyboard, and then I'm going to get their input ID. I'm going to then check if it's the same person who pressed the pause, and then I'm going to just go ahead and unpause if they press the pause, and if it is paused. The only problem with this is now the pause doesn't work because it's immediately unpausing right after it's pausing. So I'm going to go ahead and instead of checking if it's paused, I'm going to actually check if the pause menu is pulled up. So if main container dot visible, then we could unpause. So we could go ahead and pause it, and then if the menu's pulled up, we could unpause it. Now I'm going to pause it on the controller. I can't unpause it on the keyboard. However, I can click here. Also, another thing, I can't really select an option with the controller. I just kind of have to continue. I have to go to the keyboard and select an option. So if you notice, if I click on one, then I could move it around. I could go up and down, and then I could actually select one. So on this, in order to allow the controller to move it around, I could just do the focus. So button grab focus. However, right here, that's going to be whenever it's open, and that's going to create the issue to where I can't focus on another button. So I only want to focus when they first open it. The global actually has a pause game that knows when it first opens. However, that's going to be quite difficult to pass down to the pause menu. So instead, I'm just going to if event.isAction press pause button.grab focus. So this is going to focus on the continue button whenever you push the pause button. I could do just when it's opening, but either way, it should be fine. So when I push the pause button, it focuses on the continue, and I could go ahead and go to the one I want and select. So I could do options, exit. However, there is an issue. If I do pause and then I select from the keyboard, it could continue that way because I could still move around with the other ones. So I need to make so that the keyboard could only move when the keyboard paused it and the controller could only move when the controller paused it. In order to split it up like that, I'm going to be getting rid of the UI_down, and I'm going to be calling it down. I'm going to then have it so that when you press down, it's going to call UI down if we want it to. I did that for down, I'm going to do that for up, right, left, select, basically all the ones I need. So after moving all the UI buttons that I need to, the accept, left, right, up, down, I'm going to go ahead and add something in here that's going to look kind of like this, and I'm going to do this for each one. So basically, if they push the action down, and this is after it verified that they're the one who paused it, if they push the action down, it's going to create a new event action, UI down, press is true, input, post action event. So basically, this is going to call UI down, and then this is going to be a release. So I'm going to have to do this for each one, and this will allow the keyboard to move if the keyboard paused, and the controller to move if the controller paused. So I went ahead and got all that set up. Now I'm going to actually have to go through all my other code that's using the UI left, right, up, down, select, and make them use the non-UI one. So I'm pretty sure I swapped all those over. I'm going to go ahead and I'm able to move around still. I select it. I can move up and down with this one, and I could select. I pause on this one, and the keyboard can't actually do anything because we made so it's only going to call the UI if they're the one who paused. So when one player pauses, the other player can't do anything. Thanks for following this tutorial. If you liked it, go ahead and leave a like. I know it was quite a bit different than my usual tutorial, so let me know in the comments if you like this one better or worse. Also, you could join my Discord, link in the description.